Thank you, David, Provost, colleagues. As a graduate of Trinity, I'm delighted to be here with you today to celebrate 425, Trinity 425. And what I want to talk about is something, I suppose, one of the lesser known aspects of the college's history, and that is its entrepreneurial roots. It's a common misconception that Trinity College was established to promote the Protestant religion in Ireland. The college's foundation has long been perceived as part of the New English colonial project, imposed from without and disliked, resented even, by the local Catholic population. In fact, Trinity's origins come from within the city of Dublin, specifically the Merchants' Guild, the most prestigious of all the trade associations which dominated city government. In the second half of the 1500s, the interests of the Queen and State and Dublin City converged. Dublin merchants seized on an opportunity that arose from a change in government policy. The mid-Tudor state looked to extend its influence in the towns and shires of Ireland, England and Wales, and it was willing to give greater powers to individual town corporations. In return, the state would govern through, in the words of historian Colm Lennon, small knots of reliable men. In Dublin, the effect was to concentrate political, social, and economic power in the hands of the city freemen, predominantly the merchants that controlled the city government through their guild. So who were the Merchants' Guild, and what was their relationship to the city? Well, Dublin Corporation was founded by charter, which gave them an extensive range of self-government, explicitly in the hands of the guilds, the trade associations, which were organised by the type of business practiced. The oldest of these associations, and the one that dominated the city government, was the Merchants' Guild, also known as the Guild of the Holy Trinity, which is the first clue for you tonight. The Guild controlled all trade in Dublin City, and it took a cut of the profits. By the mid-1500s, Dublin City Council was bicameral. It had a Common Council that met quarterly, and it had a small upper chamber of 24 that met weekly with the mayor. And power, of course, lay with the upper chamber. In the second half of the 1500s, the chamber was dominated by the Merchants' Guild, numerically, and because they controlled election to the office of the mayor. And these were families like the Fagans, the Seagraves, Sarsfields, Fitzsimons, that are still very common, found in the city today. Now, in the mid-Tudor era, the merchants used the collaborative relationship with the government to revive old privileges and to develop new ones. The collaborative partnership between the state and Dublin City was mutually beneficial to both sides. It allowed the state to govern efficiently, and in turn, the government granted significant concessions to the city. In 1548, Dublin City was established as a borough with county status. In 1554, the corporation received a grant of the fines and forfeitures in the city and on the coast. And what this meant in practical terms was the Merchants' Guild could seize and sell contraband, and contraband was now redefined as any goods sold independently of the Guild's rules. In 1569, Dublin Corporation received a grant of the lands of the Liberty of St. Thomas. Liberties were independent jurisdictions, and after the dissolution of the monasteries in the 1530s, were sometimes used as a loophole to bypass the city's trading laws. The grant of St. Thomas's tightened guild control on commercial activity in the city. In 1572, the Merchants' Guild sent a delegation to the Queen and Council, led by Christopher Fagan. And this group secured a new grant of the Merchants' Charter, originally granted under Henry VI in 1451, with key rights spelt out in such a way as to stop any further incursions on their commercial rights. The merchants had exclusive rights to sell goods within the city and suburbs, including, and this was explicitly stated, the liberties and the former church properties that lay outside the city walls. The Gree Grant effectively updated the 1451 grant to take new realities into account. In 1582, Dublin Corporation enforced its admiralty jurisdiction on the coast from Balbriggan to Arklow, and in doing this, it established Dublin as the head port on the east coast. Up until this time, Dublin would have been less important as a port than Waterford, for example, and probably equal to Drogheda. Now, while all these concessions are made by the state to the corporation, they very clearly favour the interests of one guild, and that is the merchants. In 1568, Dublin Corporation first expressed an interest in establishing a university. In a bill introduced into the Irish Parliament, it was proposed to use St. Patrick's Cathedral as the site of the university and to seize the cathedral's property income to finance it. Ireland's Lord Chancellor, Robert Weston, wrote to advise the Queen and her Council of the proposal. By Weston's account, the plan met with widespread approval in Dublin. Richard Stanihurst, Speaker of the Irish House of Commons in Parliament, spoke in favour of a university in his opening speech. Many prominent Dublin citizens made generous offers to support the project. Archbishop Adam Loftus, the man who actually held the lease of St. Patrick's and who would have been out of pocket should it have been appropriated to finance the university, disparaged the bill as the intrigue of the city corporation, and he sent his agent Luke Challoner to London to block it. Successfully, I might add. Now, it may be surprising to many of you that Loftus and Challoner behaved like this, because both men are often put forward as the driving force behind the plans for a university. But in 1569, and again in 1584, Loftus repeatedly blocked proposals for a university that would have resulted in his losing the valuable lease of St. Patrick's. So before Dublin Corporation could realise, and the merchants could realise their plans for a university, they had to first achieve consensus between the corporation and influential members of central government, not least Archbishop Loftus. But you might ask, why was the Guild so interested in having a university? We tend to think of business and commerce as chalk and cheese, but in looking to found a university, the Dublin merchants and Dublin Corporation had very concrete aims. They wanted to bring all trading within the city of Dublin and its precincts under their control. They wanted to enhance the city's reputation as a destination hub to visit, live, and work. They wanted to stimulate commerce in the city by bringing in a student body. Because if we cast our minds back a generation earlier, the dissolution of the religious houses in 1537 tore a great hole in the fabric of Irish society. In Dublin, dissolution was quite simply bad for business. It reduced the number of visitors to the city, and it dampened down trade. The religious were big purchasers of goods and services. They bought everyday supplies: oysters, fish, grain, tallow and rope, and luxury goods: beef, wine, textiles, paper, and wrought iron. Dissolution also meant the closure of the schools and the end of poor law dispensed from the hospitals and the asylums run by the religious orders, and poverty became much more visible on Dublin city streets. Now, many church buildings in the city and its suburbs were also left empty. St. Thomas's, St. John's Kilmainham, St. Patrick's Cathedral, St. Mary's on the North Bank, and the Priory of All Hallows, just to name a few. And St. Patrick's and St. Thomas's were both liberties with their own independent jurisdiction. In other words, possessing them, it offered anyone who leased them or who controlled the properties, they had a potential loophole in the city's trading bylaws. Church buildings outside the city walls, we've seen up until the regrant in the 1570s, were also beyond the control of the city's institutions, including the Merchants' Guild. And by the 1570s, we see very many contemporary accounts of foreign traders, foreign to the city at least, that gathered in the former abbeys and monasteries to buy and sell independently of the Merchants' Guild. Dublin's merchant community recognised that former institutional church buildings could be repurposed as markets near the city, and they understood that converting even one of those to a university would reduce the financial threat that they represented, to say nothing of the potential windfall that a large body of students on the city's doorstep could represent. So between 1568 and 1592, the Merchants' Guild steered Dublin Corporation to campaign for a university college in the city. To achieve their purpose, they had to bring on board the chief governor and council. From the 1560s, successive governors had championed the university idea, but the state, as ever, had other priorities. In fact, left to the chief governor and council, we'd probably still be waiting for a university. The corporation also changed the emphasis from St. Patrick's to another college property beyond the gates, All Hallows Priory, to endow the university college. And by removing any threat to Archbishop Loftus, father of 20, to his income, they brought him onside in their campaign. Now, the first indication that consensus had been achieved was in a 1590 sermon given by Archbishop Loftus to the corporation. And in a clear case of poacher turned gamekeeper, Loftus urged the corporation to consider how city trade had suffered because of the dissolution of the monasteries. He drew a comparison between Dublin, Oxford, and Cambridge. These other towns flourished precisely because they had colleges. Loftus argued that a college would achieve the same purpose in Dublin, and it would bring strangers and their money into the city. The college would enrich Dublin and civilise Ireland, and the Archbishop urged the aldermen to consider the plan. Duly noted, on 22nd of January 1591, the Corporation of Dublin received a petition from certain well-disposed persons, giving many good and effectual persuasions to establish a university. The corporation sent its own petition to the chief governor to found a university college, and it offered All Hallows near Dublin as a site. The Dublin government forwarded the corporation's petition to London with an advocate to argue its merits before the Queen and Council. The advocate, Archdeacon Henry Usher, who reported directly to the Archbishop, is yet another clear sign, a clear public sign of Loftus's support of the programme. A flurry of letters were exchanged between Dublin and London in support of the project, and on this occasion they appear to have hit their mark. On 21st of December 1591, Elizabeth I issued letters patent for a university college in Dublin, citing the corporation's petition as the major factor for the grant. In March 1592, a royal charter issued to establish the College of the Holy and Undivided Trinity of Queen Elizabeth near Dublin. And earlier this afternoon, I double-checked it in the college website to make sure I got it right. Now, once the college was a done deal, many people claimed a significant role in its foundation, not least Loftus, Challoner, and Usher. We can almost certainly dismiss Loftus. The documents show that in the previous 30 years' generation, he had blocked the project for a university. Luke Challoner, who at least played a part in laying out the premises and in fundraising for the new building, is a possibility. But again, if we look back at the documents, we see that Challoner in the 1580s was acting on his master Loftus's instructions. So Challoner was not at that time a free agent who could put forward his own plans. And ditto Henry Usher, who in 1584 argued against the college and flip-flopped in 1591 to argue in favour. Usher was similarly not in a position to promote independent plans. And to assess their contribution on the basis of what subsequently happened, on what they subsequently did after the college's foundation, distorts what actually happened in laying the groundwork. Now, the Merchants' Guild, who I argue are behind the foundation, were very quickly pushed aside after 1592, not least because many of them were Catholic recusants. And from the 1590s, they were gradually blocked from participation in the public life of the city. But their contribution hasn't been entirely erased. They gave their name to the new college, and they even repurposed their coat of arms for use. And I want to stop now and just have a quick look at the coat of arms. These are the arms of the Guild of Merchants of the Holy Trinity in Dublin. Now, this is the earliest drawing that survives in the Genealogical Office in the National Library. It's a 1684 regrant, but if you read the documentation supporting this, it recites that the Guild is founded in 1451 and re-established in 1587. And the Herald states at this point in time that this is a regrant of the original because the Guild has lost its original public seal in the late Troubles, in the Cromwellian conquest. Now this on the top left, your top left, is the earliest sketch of the Trinity College coat of arms, again in the Genealogical Office. And it's from a volume of sketches by Richard Carney, the Ulster King of Arms, dating from 1660. I believe there are some earlier seals from the college which actually predate this, but this seems to be the earliest one in the Genealogical Office. This is the earliest Trinity coat of arms actually drawn up and emblazoned in the Genealogical Office. And it's quite late. It dates from 1901. And this is a quick comparison of the coat of arms. You'll see the elements are essentially the same, but the waves have been replaced by a book in Trinity's arms. So the Merchants Guild gave their name to the new college and repurposed their coat of arms for use. It was an audacious move, effectively branding the new university college, and would have been understood precisely in those terms by contemporary Dublin citizens. Just as we, waking up tomorrow morning to learn about a new Microsoft or a Facebook or a Bill and Melissa Gates university, would have a fairly good idea of who was behind it. In conclusion, Trinity College's origins, I argue, are indisputably Irish. But contrary to popular perception, the university was actually founded by entrepreneurs from Dublin and the East Coast, with the express purpose of stimulating trade and commerce. Thank you very much.